Ask any hunter which lever gun won the West, and he'll say the Winchester Model 1894. 7.5 million sold, a president's rifle, John Moses Browning's own design. He's not wrong about the sales, he's wrong about the gun. In 1948, a smaller Connecticut company built a rival with a stronger action and a solid top that doesn't throw hot brass past your face. The Marlin Model 336. Everywhere except the sales chart, it usually wins. So here's the fight. 8 rounds, judged on the things a hunter actually pays for. It starts with which rifle was born better, and it ends with who actually carried it. Round 8. Birth. Browning's patent was granted in August of 1894. What he actually handed Winchester wasn't a lever gun. Winchester had plenty of those. It was a lockup strong enough to hold pressures the older lever actions couldn't survive. That's the whole contribution, and it's the part nobody repeats at the gun show. The catalog says the 1894 was the first American rifle designed for smokeless. That part holds up. What gets tacked on is that you could buy one chambered for it, and you couldn't. Late 1894, they went out in .32-40 and .38-55, both black powder. Smokeless came the next year, designed for it, sold without it, and the gap between those two is a year and a marketing department. Now the Marlin, where the timeline gets awkward for the Winchester crowd. The 336 is older than its name. It starts life as the Marlin Model 1893, a year before Browning's patent. In 1936, Marlin gave it new wood and sights and called it the Model 1936, then shortened that to Model 36 almost immediately, because gun companies are bad at names. The real surgery came in 1948, a new round bolt, chrome plated, replacing the old square one, a redesigned cartridge carrier, a better extractor, coil springs where flat springs used to break. That rifle became the 336, and it's the one Ruger is still building today, which means the challenger in this fight is the older idea. Marlin didn't invent the solid top receiver in '48. That layout runs back through the 36 to the 1893 and arguably to the 1889. What '48 did was finally build an action strong enough to deserve an idea Marlin had been sitting on for 55 years. Round 8 goes to Winchester anyway. Browning's lockup is the more important piece of engineering, and pretending otherwise would be dishonest. Just don't credit him for the smokeless part. Round 7, where the brass goes. This is the round that settles it for most hunters. When you work the lever on a Winchester 94, the empty case comes out the top of the receiver and goes up, straight up, past your face. That isn't a defect, it's the design. And for 80 years, it cost nobody anything, because nobody was putting glass on a 30-30. It was a woods rifle with iron sights and a 100-yard job. Then scopes got cheap, and the 1894 had a problem it could not solve. There is nowhere over the bore to mount one because that's where the brass lives. Owners improvised. Some bought an offset mount that hangs the scope off the left side of the receiver, line of sight 1.5 inches off the bore, and a trim rifle made to look like it's been in a wreck. Some bolted a long eye relief scope out on the barrel, forward of the ejection port. Most did the smart thing and skipped glass entirely. A receiver-mounted peep sight, aperture right by the eye. And honestly, for what a 30-30 is for, a good peep is the better sighting system. Fast, clean, nothing to fog. It isn't a bad answer. It's just the only one you get. The Marlin never had the argument. The 336 has a solid top and throws its brass out the side, leaving a flat slab of steel over the bore, exactly where a scope belongs, low and centered and boring. Credit where it's owed, though. Marlin wasn't drilling and tapping them at the factory from day one either. That reportedly starts around 1956. Winchester's fix arrived in 1982. Not side ejection, Winchester never went there. Angle eject. Throw the case out on a diagonal instead of straight up, and a conventional scope will clear it. It works fine. It's also a fix for a problem the rifle was born with, delivered 88 years late, and only once the market made ignoring it impossible. Round 7, Marlin, not close. Round 6, the action. Go back to that round bolt in 1948. A square bolt needs a square hole, and a square hole means steel cut away to make the corners. Marlin went round and left the steel in the receiver. Now add a receiver with no ejection port cut through the top. Put those together, and you get the action gunsmiths and lifetime owners have long called the stiffer of the two. That isn't brand loyalty talking, that's geometry. The Marlin also cleans from the breech, which matters more than collectors admit. A rifle that's easy to run a rod through is a rifle that actually gets cleaned instead of wiped down and stood back in the corner. Paul Harrell put both rifles in 30-30 on paper and on the clock and filmed the whole thing. The Marlin printed the smaller group. Running a drill across 5 targets, the Marlin came in about a second faster. And at the end he came out and said he just likes the Marlin better. That's a preference, not a finding, and he said so himself. 2 rifles, 1 shooter, 1 afternoon. It isn't a laboratory. It's still more evidence than most of this argument has ever produced. Here's the Winchester's answer, and it's a good one. The 94 is lighter, trimmer, flatter against your body, and it carries better. If your season is 10 miles of walking and 1 shot, that matters more than a stiff receiver ever will. Most men who prefer the 94 prefer it for exactly that, and they aren't wrong. They're just answering a different question. Round 6, Marlin. Quick thing before round 5. If you've owned either one of these, hit the like button. That's what tells YouTube to put this in front of the next man with a 30-30 in his safe. And subscribe. This is the whole channel, the hardware told straight. Round 5. Rifling and what you can feed them. In 1953, Marlin introduced micro-groove rifling. First in 22 rim fire, later in the center fires. Instead of a few deep lands cut the old way, many shallow grooves cut in a single pass. Marlin's pitch was more accuracy, easier cleaning, less bullet distortion. With jacketed bullets, it held up. With cast lead, it didn't. Shallow grooves don't grip a soft or undersized cast bullet, and what you get back is leading in the barrel and groups that open up. Hand loaders worked it out. Oversized, harder, gas check under them, and a micro groove barrel shoots lead fine. But that's a fix, and a fix is an admission. Marlin eventually made a quieter one, bringing Ballard-type rifling back for some chamberings, particularly on the big bore end where cast bullets live. A company doesn't reverse its own headline feature for fun, so if you cast your own, the Winchester's conventional rifling is the friendlier barrel. There's a man on a forum right now recommending the 94 specifically because it doesn't have micro groove. There's another man in the same thread who bought the Marlin because it does. Same feature, opposite verdicts, both men shooting well. That's the honest state of it. Then there's what you can chamber. Both rifles live and die on the 30-30, and both were offered in 32 Winchester Special, which exists mostly so people could argue about it. But the Marlin has one the Winchester never standardized, 35 Remington. Remington's own cartridge from 1906, adopted by the 336 in the early 1950s. Bigger hole, heavier bullet, and the answer to every deer camp conversation that starts with, "What if it's a bear?" Winchester takes the rifling, Marlin takes the cartridge list, and the cartridge list is what you carry into the woods. Round 5, Marlin. Round 4, safety. 2 rifles went roughly 90 years each with no manual safety on them, and then both grew 1 inside the same decade. Nobody at a deer camp asked for that. Nobody ever has. Marlin went first, adding a crossbolt safety in the mid-80s, a button through the receiver, on top of the half-cock notch that had been doing the job since before anyone's grandfather was born. Current Marlins carry both. The traditionalist verdict has been loud and consistent for 40 years, unnecessary, lawyer-driven, and it ruins the lines of the receiver. Some owners pull the button out and replace it with a plug. That's a real cottage industry, and it exists because the part was never for the shooter. Winchester ran the same play, then thought better of it. Modern 94s use a rebounding hammer. After the shot, it springs back off the firing pin on its own, which is a genuinely good idea, and quietly retired the manual half-cock. For the manual safety, Winchester ran a crossbolt from 1992 to 2002, took 10 years of complaints, and in 2003 moved it to a hammer block on the top tang where your thumb already is. What that safety actually does, it stops the hammer from reaching the firing pin. It doesn't stop the hammer from falling. Neither of these came from a hunter. They came from a legal department, which is where most safety features are born and none of them are loved. But Winchester listened and moved its button somewhere sensible, and Marlin's is still sticking out the side of the receiver 40 years later. Round 4, Winchester. Marlin still leads 3-2. Round 3, 2 dark ages. In 1964, Winchester went through the Model 94 looking for money and found it everywhere. Forged steel out of the receiver, sintered and cast material in. Machined internals replaced with stamped sheet metal. The cartridge lifter is the one everybody points at. Solid pins replaced with hollow roll pins. Less polish, less finish, plainer wood. One accountant runs the changes to 26 separate items. The rifle got cheaper to build, which was the objective, and it looked it in the hand on day one. The customers noticed immediately, and pre-64 became a price bracket that still exists 60 years later. Be fair though, the legend outgrew the facts. Ask a gunsmith and you'll mostly get the same verdict. The post-64 guns work. What Winchester wrecked was finish and consistency, not function. You'll also hear that Winchester cheapened how the barrel attaches. That one's harder to pin down. The barrel threads the same way on both sides of 1964. The real story didn't need the help. Marlin's turn came in 2008 when Remington's purchase closed and production began shifting out of North Haven, Connecticut, splitting by 2010 between Ilion, New York, and Mayfield, Kentucky. What came out of that stretch got its own name from the men who bought it, Remlins. Tool marks left in the metal, action so gritty owners took them apart and polished them at the kitchen table. Wood that didn't meet metal, sights canted off vertical, loose metal chips rattling inside brand new receivers. A Remington foreman put it flatly. The old machinery had been nursed along by veterans in North Haven. Only a few of them made the move to Ilion, and Remington had no history with lever rifles. That's not a scandal. That's an acquisition. Somebody in a conference room bought 130 years of hand knowledge and then didn't hire it. Round 3, Marlin, and I'll defend it. Remington built bad rifles for a few years, then got better. Winchester rewrote the rifle itself permanently, and 6 decades later the market still prices the 94 as 2 different guns. Round 2, 2 resurrections. Both dark ages ended. Winchester's ended the hard way. The New Haven plant closed in 2006, and the American-made Model 94 died with it. The rifle came back in 2010, built by Moroku in Kochi, Japan, a firm that had already been making historic Winchester lever guns since the mid-90s. And by most accounts, the Moroku guns are better made than anything New Haven shipped after 1964. Fit, finish, machining. There are 2 problems with that. The first is what came back. Not a mass-market rifle, but limited historic grades. A custom grade of 500 and a high grade of 500. That's a commemorative program, not a working rifle rolling off a line. The second is geography. This is a rifle whose entire sales pitch is that it won the American West, now built 6,000 miles from the factory that made it famous. Nothing wrong with the steel, something odd about the story. Marlin got the better ending. Remington's parent went bankrupt in 2020, and Ruger bought the Marlin brand and its tooling for about $30 million, moving the whole operation to Mayodan, North Carolina. The first Ruger-built Marlin came off the line on September 30th, 2021, in 1895. Marlin's own big bore, not Winchester's rifle, and the .336 followed. Ruger also did the unglamorous engineering, heat-treating the receiver forgings before machining them so they don't warp, recutting the stock inletting so the wood actually bears the recoil where it's supposed to. That's not a marketing feature. That's somebody going through the complaint file line by line. The reception has been what you'd expect. Ruger fixed it. One rifle came back as a 500-piece collector run from Japan. The other came back as a deer rifle you can buy. Round 2, Marlin. 5-2, which decides it. Round 1 is the one everybody came for anyway. Round 1, who actually carried it? Theodore Roosevelt owned Model 1894s and used them. He called one his Little 30, and he shot antelope with it past 180 yards. He also had one fitted with a Maxim silencer for pests around Sagamore Hill, a sitting president quietly suppressing varmints in his own yard. Try running that through a press office today. A Winchester understood exactly what it had. The millionth Model 94 went to Calvin Coolidge in 1927. The 1.5 millionth went to Harry Truman in 1948. The 2 millionth went to Dwight Eisenhower in 1953. 3 presidents, 3 presentation rifles, and a marketing department that never had to invent a single word of it. And there's Tom Horn, scout, Pinkerton man, hired killer, hanged in 1903. The story goes that he owned a Model 1894, serial number 82667, handed it to Charles B. Irwin days before the hanging, and that it ended up on display at the National Cowboy Hall of Fame. That story is repeated everywhere. It also runs back through one chain of provenance and has never been independently corroborated. Take it as what it is, a very good story nobody has proved. Now the Marlin's case, and I'm not going to dress it up because there isn't a famous name to put here. No president, no hanged gunman. We went looking. There's nothing there. What there is instead, 3.5 million rifles by 1983, second only to the 94 among American sporting rifles, and later, estimates past 4 million. Millions of ordinary deer rifles in ordinary closets behind the coats, most of them still working. Money tells the same story from the other end. The 1894 launched at $18, about 2 weeks' wages for a working man in the 1890s. A real purchase, not a rich man's toy. Today, a used 94 runs $500 to $2,500, depending on what it is, with pre-64 guns taking a real premium. The Marlin's priced the same way with different letters. A JM stamp from before Remington is what people want, a Remlin is what they haggle over, and the new Ruger guns retail north of $1,000. Round 1 goes to Winchester outright. Roosevelt, Coolidge, Truman, Eisenhower, and a hanged man's rifle in a museum case. The Marlin has nothing that touches it, which is the whole point. That round is about provenance. Not one thing in it will help you hit a deer. Final score, 5 rounds to 3. Winchester took birth, safety, and legend. Marlin took ejection, the action, what you can feed it, the dark years, and the comeback. Look at which pile has a shooting in it. So ask any hunter which lever gun won the West, and he'll say the Winchester, and he'll be right about the sales, right about the history, and wrong about the gun. The famous one and the better one are not the same rifle, and they almost never are. Now your turn. There's a 30-30 in an awful lot of American closets. If there's one in yours, tell me in the comments which it is. Winchester or Marlin, pre-64, JM stamp, whatever it's wearing, and who carried it before you. That's the part I want to read. If this was worth your time, hit the like button and subscribe if you want the real hardware of the frontier, told straight and without the movie version.